Hello Year 9, hope everyone's doing well. This is a discussion of the ideas that you're asked to rank in the third section of the reading booklet that goes with Lord of the Flies. Now, before we start, you'll probably have noticed that on the chart there are 8 things to rank, but 2 of them are the same. So when I go through the answers here, I'm only going to go through 7, obviously, because that wouldn't make sense. And I want to talk around the answers as well. And some of the ideas will be repeated from other videos because they're important ideas, and some of them are things that I perhaps haven't thought of before that have occurred to me since I've been putting this together. So let's make a start. So the first event is that a group of boys is marooned on an island after evacuation from a war zone. And I'm thinking, this idea marooned, I suppose in a way they are marooned. Sort of marooning is, I suppose, deliberately leaving someone in isolation with no way to get back. Obviously they were attacked, that's how they ended up on the island, and they must feel more marooned because they've got no adults there or nobody in authority to control them. But anyway, whatever term we use for it, it's the same, the outcome's the same. You've got a lot of boys, young boys, who have to find a way of fending for themselves, of surviving on this island. Now, the island itself is not named, it's a made-up island. People have tried to work out where it is. It looks as though it's in the Pacific Ocean somewhere, en route from England, Britain to Australia, but we know it's a completely different environment from the one that they're used to, and the war zone here is Britain. And sort of quibble over whether to say England or Britain sometimes, because England and being English is mentioned. And the war, as I've said before, is a fictional war. It's an atomic war. It's a war unlike any war that ever has actually been fought. If we had a World War III, which we won't, it will probably be an atomic war. Okay. So the second event is Ralph and Piggy are the first on the scene and use a conch to summon other survivors. Well, they don't know that there are other survivors to begin with. Piggy's desperate for there to be other survivors. He says to Ralph early on, they must have got out, mustn't they? Meaning they must have got out of the plane. And when he then encourages Ralph to blow the conch to bring anybody else who survived the plane crash together, it's a sort of sign of hope. And yet Piggy is the one who's the messenger of doom and gloom. He puts everything very clearly and says, we was attacked, and nobody knows that we're here, so nobody can come and rescue us, that kind of thing. So he does bring doom and gloom, but also he clearly is hopeful at the same time that there will be other people there who will come when Ralph blows the conch. And remember that's got to be a joint effort. Neither Ralph nor Piggy could get that conch to summon other survivors without each other. They need each other at that point, and that's something that Golding doesn't tell us, but it's something that he doesn't make it very hard to work that out. Okay. So the third thing to happen is the most impressive entrance is made by a group of choir boys led by the red-haired Jack Merridew, head boy and leader of the choir. Okay, now this is an opinion. Most impressive entrance. I suppose you can interpret it as being most impressive because the choir boys come along the beach marching in 2 parallel lines and in step with each other, and they've still got their uniforms on. And it's a mysterious vision to begin with. They're so far away from the boys that have already gathered together. And the shimmering that heat causes, the heat haze, makes them look as though they're some kind of creature. And in fact, that's what they are in the eyes of Ralph and Piggy and whoever's watching them approaching on the island, and the word creature is used, it's not until they sort of come closer and the waves of heat stop obscuring the vision that you can see that it's not a creature, it's actually a group of boys. And then red-haired Jack Merridew. Okay, and just as we said that blonde hair has certain connotations, Golding has made Jack red-haired because we associate red hair with a fiery temper, perhaps with a quite a passionate character, and that certainly turns out to be something that Jack becomes known for later on. And very early on he's making sort of aggressive gestures with, he's got a knife, he's got quite a big knife on him, and he's sort of stabbing it into tree trunks. Okay. And then 4, one of the choir boys, Simon, faints near the platform where the boys are gathering. 2 things about that, I'll mention Simon in a moment. The platform where the boys are gathering is because the island has been very generous in a way, and in providing this flat rock that sticks out into the lagoon, runs through the forest or the jungle, across the beach and into the lagoon, and it's got very small young palms on it. Because it's a rock and it's only got a thin layer of soil on it, they can't grow very high, and the trunks fall over and they make a natural seating area, and there's still some palms, saplings they're called, so young palm trees, that cause shade, so it's a more comfortable place for the boys to sit together than anywhere else. So it seems a sort of ready-made sort of meeting place, and that is where they have their assemblies. I've talked about Simon fainting before and how it sort of makes him what is probably a poor choice for Ralph to take on the expedition later. But Simon fainting makes him stand out, and it makes us associate him with someone who's more spiritual, and not perhaps physically robust, but he certainly has something that's different from the other boys in that he's a more sort of, not religious, but a more sort of mystical character. And I'll talk about him again with one of the later points. Okay. Piggy's name is revealed to the boys' general amusement, that's number 5. We never get to know Piggy's real name. He's just known as Piggy, and he looks a bit like a pig as well. He's very rounded because he's plump, his flesh is pink, and he's got a button nose, and a button nose is a nose that's sort of looks as though it's been pushed up a little bit so that you can see the nostrils a bit more clearly. Therefore it looks like a button, but it also looks like a pig's snout, and I'll probably say more about that in a video that's just about Piggy. But the boy's general amusement at his name is a source of shame for him. He goes red, and then he bows his head and he starts cleaning his glasses, and he cleans his glasses a lot when he's feeling anxious or uncomfortable. So this is a moment that is very difficult for him, but it does sort of break the ice with everybody else, and it's Ralph who reveals his name, and it feels quite like a betrayal, really. But then we have to ask, was Piggy unwise to tell Ralph that in the first place? But whatever the causes are, Golding needs him excuse me, Golding needs him to be known as Piggy, to make him unfortunate, and for reasons that I'll discuss in one of the later points. There are only 2 left anyway. Ralph, Jack and Simon decide to explore the island. Well, it's Ralph who decides to explore the island, and Jack and Simon decide when they're asked to go with him. Obviously Jack is going to want to go. His actions when we meet him are full of flourish and vigour, and he's seems a very sort of lively, active, physically robust young man. He's the one that decided that they would all be absolutely fine, the choir boys would all be absolutely fine keeping their uniforms on in what is very clearly a terrible heat. Neither you nor I would have that many layers of clothing on if it was that hot. Now, I do think that perhaps Simon is a poor choice. And then I was thinking as well, when Piggy was doing the very responsible adult thing in taking the children's names, Ralph wasn't really very interested, and yet it was the right thing to do for reasons that I've already explained in my previous video. And I'm thinking as well that Ralph's got to act the leader, and he does become very much like a leader. Just after he's been elected, he does start to show leadership qualities. Excuse me. But a good leader would have been more interested maybe in the names. Remember, these are my ideas, so you can argue with them. But maybe because Simon fainted, as we said in an earlier point, and it made him stand up, maybe Simon's is the only name he can really remember apart from Jack, and he really doesn't want Piggy to go. And it's important that Piggy doesn't go, because he's sort of the next in line, really. And he has started to show responsibility. He has started to show some signs of care and compassion for the others. So he really is the ideal sort of stand-in parent figure for the young boys that are left behind when these three go exploring the island. And that exploration of the island is important, and that's for another time. And then finally, for the 7 steps that are in that chart in the booklet, the 3 boys come across a piglet, which Jack almost kills before hesitating. He declares he will spill blood next time. Now none of this is a surprise, because the whole idea of Jack being willing to kill something completely ties in with the idea that he wants his choir to become hunters, and one of the early things he does is take out a knife and pushes it into a tree trunk, and his aggressive language. So it's no surprise that Jack almost kills this piglet. And it's no surprise that he hesitates either, because as aggressive as he is, he's still an English schoolboy, completely out of his natural habitat. And he doesn't know really how to proceed with killing the pig. He seems to be sort of all talk and no action at the moment, but a change comes over him, and when he encounters a pig another time, he kills it, and it provides meat for the boys, and it's written about very graphically, and without wanting to trigger anyone's sensibilities, when Golding writes it, he writes it to me almost as a sexual abuse scene. It could be quite disturbing, but those are the point where he hesitates and the point later where he kills the piglet are episodes that need to be looked into. Remember, in the exam you won't be asked to focus on a particular extract. You can choose whichever part of the text serves your purpose best to answer the question. But those are 2 good points, because you can think about what Golding does, what methods he uses to suggest that a change has come over Jack that leads him from hesitating to spilling blood next time. And just before finishing, I just want to mention the idea that it's pigs on the island, because, Piggy is not called Piggy by accident. Golding has chosen them. The piglet almost gets killed, and later the pig does get killed, and pigs get tangled in the creepers, just as Piggy got tangled in the creepers to begin with, which sort of symbolises the kind of trouble he'll get into. But there's also a very strong suggestion, Golding isn't hiding it that much, that Piggy is sort of easy pickings for the boys, and we know already that he is, because they've been laughing at him jointly. They've sort of ganged up on him, laughing at his name. So that's just those 7 steps in that chart, which hopefully that little bit of talk around those ideas is useful. And these things will crop up time and time again. But that's it for the time being.